In the heart of a forgotten farm, a widow stood alone, until the echoes of her ancestors sparked a battle against one of the most powerful agricultural corporations in the country. This is a story of roots deeper than blood, of land that remembers, and of one woman who refused to let it be taken. What began with a hidden letter became a fight for justice, history, and hope, and it changed an entire town. The wind moved like an old ghost across the golden fields, carrying dust and sorrow in equal measure. Grace stood on her porch, eyes fixed on the land that once sang with wheat and laughter. Now it whispered nothing but debt, drought, and silence. This was where she and Ethan dreamed big dreams. Now, only the echo of those dreams remained. But Grace wasn't the kind to walk away from soil soaked with generations. Each morning, before the sun rose, she laced her worn boots and stepped into the chill, not for duty, but out of memory. The routine was her anchor, even as the tractor sat rusted and useless behind the barn. Neighbors shook their heads, saying the farm was done for, but Grace still believed land could hear, and she was speaking with every breath. The town had stopped hoping, but she hadn't. Not yet. Martha Blake, who ran the small-town grocery store, always slipped an extra loaf into Grace's bag, pretending it was a mistake. She didn't offer pity, just quiet kindness, and the wisdom of someone who knew that a struggling farm sometimes needed flour more than advice. God helps those who help the soil, she'd say, her hands busy, her eyes knowing. And Grace, proud as she was, never corrected her. One gray afternoon, while clearing the old barn, Grace heard a creak beneath her feet. Curious, she pried up a loose plank and uncovered a wooden box, hidden in dust and silence for decades. Inside were old letters, folded maps, and something stranger, papers marked with coordinates and names. She didn't know it yet, but that moment cracked open a door long sealed by time. That night, Grace sat by the kitchen table with a lantern glowing softly beside her, reading the letters with trembling fingers. They were written by her great-grandmother, Elizabeth Miller, a woman Grace had only heard about in whispers and faded photographs. Elizabeth's words spoke of resistance, of land stolen, and battles fought with ink instead of bullets. One letter mentioned a private agreement meant to keep a portion of the Miller land protected. And that protection, it seemed, had never been honored. She spent the next morning at the town library, thumbing through dusty land records and old maps. Comparing coordinates, she discovered something shocking. The land in question wasn't just her family's legacy. It was now under the control of Red Earth AgriCorp, a powerful company known for squeezing the soil dry and leaving towns like hers hollow. The land still carried the Miller name in forgotten ledgers, tucked away behind decades of corporate red tape. Grace's heart pounded. This could be her way forward, or the start of a war she wasn't ready for. Back on the farm, she found Henry Dawson leaning against her gate, chewing on a toothpick like he had nowhere better to be. Henry was a neighbor, retired rancher, and a man of few words, most of them sarcastic. "Heard you kicked up some ghosts in the barn," he said, eyes narrowing. Grace, half expecting ridicule, told him the truth. But instead of laughing, Henry nodded slowly. "My father knew your great-grandmother. She didn't just farm, she fought. Maybe it's time someone finished what she started." There was weight in Henry's voice, the kind born from loss and long memory. That night, Grace sat on the porch again, staring out at the moonlit fields. She could feel something stirring beneath the surface, not just in the soil, but inside her. She wasn't just trying to survive anymore. She was starting to remember who she came from. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to fight for what was hers. Grace knew she couldn't do it alone, so she returned to Henry the next morning with a thermos of black coffee and a request. "I need help proving this land is mine," she said, her voice steady, though her hands were shaking. Henry didn't speak at first. He simply took the thermos, sipped slowly, then gave a single nod. "Then we'd better start digging, and not just in the dirt." With Henry's help, Grace began collecting every record, every letter, every scrap that connected her family to the land. In the evenings, young Liam Carter started showing up at the edge of the property, offering help without asking for anything in return. He was the son of Ethan's best friend, restless, aimless, but strong and curious. Grace put a shovel in his hands and a task on his back, and to her surprise, he kept showing up. "I don't want to be stuck in town like my dad," he admitted one day. "I want to build something." In Grace's quiet strength, he saw a path forward. In Liam's energy, Grace saw the future. Together, the three of them, Grace, Henry, and Liam, formed an unlikely trio. They worked in silence most days, bonded by sweat and stubborn hope. The farm, once still and broken, began to breathe again. The soil softened under their care. The barn stood straighter, and something in Grace's chest loosened, like a knot slowly coming undone. She started writing again, just like Elizabeth had, journaling every day, as if her story mattered too. But the calm didn't last long. One morning, a sleek black truck rolled onto her property. Two men in pressed suits stepped out, holding clipboards and wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "We're with Red Earth," one said. "Just routine land verification." Grace's jaw tightened. She knew exactly what this was, pressure dressed as politeness. And now, the real fight was beginning. The visit from Red Earth was no accident. It was a warning. Grace watched their truck disappear down the dusty road, her stomach churning. That night, Henry confirmed her fears. "They're sniffing around because they know what you found." Red Earth had a history of quiet intimidation, but they didn't expect resistance from a lone widow with no legal team. Grace, however, was no longer alone. And she wasn't afraid, not anymore. Henry contacted an old friend in the city, a retired land rights attorney named Marjorie Bell. Fierce, sharp, and with a voice like gravel, Marjorie arrived within days, reading through Elizabeth's letters like they were gold. "This isn't just emotional," she said. "It's historical. If we push this right, you have a case, not just in court, but in the public eye." She warned it would be hard, expensive, brutal, but also very possible. Grace looked at Liam, then at Henry. "Then let's dig in." News began to spread quietly through the community. Some neighbors offered support, dropping off tools, hay, or even just a kind word. Others kept their distance, afraid of Red Earth's long reach. But Grace didn't blame them. Fear was a seed that grew fast. She simply kept working, planting both crops and courage, one row at a time. And under her calloused hands, the earth began to respond, as if it, too, had been waiting to be defended. One night, while checking the barn, Grace found a fire smoldering beneath the hay. Not an accident, an act of warning. She managed to contain it before it spread, but the message was clear. This fight wouldn't stay polite for long. She called the sheriff, who shrugged. No proof, no suspects. But Grace didn't flinch. As she watched the smoke curl into the night sky, her voice was steady. "Let them come. This land has survived worse. So have I." Grace doubled down after the fire. Security lights were installed. Liam built a new gate with Henry, stronger and taller than before. Every small task became a message. We're not backing down. Marjorie filed the first legal claim, and soon after, Grace's story began to reach beyond the county. A local journalist visited, then a podcast picked it up. The Widow and the Corporation, they called it. Grace didn't like the title, but she liked the attention it brought. Red Earth responded fast and harsh. A countersuit, accusations of trespassing, offers to buy the land at insultingly low prices. "They're trying to break your will," Marjorie said, arms crossed in Grace's kitchen. But Grace just smiled. Let them try. Letters from strangers began to arrive. Farmers, widows, young dreamers, all moved by her fight. Some sent seeds, others money. Most just said, "Don't stop." And Grace didn't. Spring came early that year, and with it, rain, real rain. The kind that seeps deep into roots. The wheat started to push through, stubborn and green, like it remembered how to grow. Liam danced in the mud, laughing like a child. Even Henry allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't just a new season, it was a shift. The land felt different, braver, as if it believed in itself again. Grace placed one of Elizabeth's letters in a jar and buried it near the oldest tree. A promise, we're still here. But one morning, as Grace walked toward the fields, she stopped cold. Red Earth had brought in machinery, giant tractors lined along the disputed border. Grace knew what that meant. They were going to dig, not for crops, but for control. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She simply turned back to the house, picked up her phone, and called every contact she had. "It's time," she said. "Let them see what standing your ground really looks like." The protest started small, just Grace, Liam, Henry, and a few friends standing quietly along the edge of the field. But within hours, more arrived. Families with signs, elders with stories, young people with cameras. By noon, the road was lined with cars and voices. Local media came, then national. Drones flew overhead. Grace stood at the front, hat low over her eyes, hands dusty, heart steady. "This land remembers us," she said to the crowd. "And we're here to remind it we remember too." Red Earth hesitated. Bulldozers paused. Their public image was now at stake, and Grace knew it. Marjorie delivered a final blow. New evidence, uncovered from archived court filings, showed Elizabeth's claim had never been voided. It had simply been buried. The legal team folded fast after that. Within weeks, a settlement was reached. Grace's land would be returned in full, and Red Earth would pay damages. The story made headlines across the country. But Grace didn't want fame, only her soil back. Weeks passed. The harvest came, and with it, abundance. The town held a festival, not because they'd won, but because they'd remembered how to stand together. Grace spoke only briefly, thanking everyone, then slipping away to sit under the old oak. Liam found her there, handing her a cup of cider. "You did it," he said. Grace shook her head gently. "We did." And in that moment, everything felt still, not empty, but full, as if the land itself was finally breathing easy. Years later, the farm thrived. The soil rich again, the house repaired, the barn alive with work. Grace wrote her story down, not for glory but for memory. Her journal ended with just one line: "We come from strong roots." And they still hold. When she passed, it was under that same oak tree, hands in the dirt, eyes on the wheat. And the land, her land, kept growing. Thank you for joining this journey through resilience, hope, and the power of standing your ground. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new tale of courage and heart. Your support keeps these stories alive and the fight for what matters strong. See you in the next video.